Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrence Foley, President and CEO of the City Ave Special Services District. The district unites businesses, property owners, developers, and residents in a common goal of making City Ave a great place to live, work, play, and learn. The district typically hosts events that take place at various locations throughout the district, but due to current circumstances, we love that we can still deliver events to the community virtually. Upcoming events can be found on our website, cityave.org. Thank you for joining us for our first Lunch and Learn webinar of the year, Commuting During COVID and Beyond. We know employers are hesitant to bring employees back to the worksite as we are still in a pandemic. However, we thought it was important to have this presentation in the early part of the year so employers and employees can become better educated on the commuting options available to them when businesses all start to return. I want to thank Ernie McNeely, Lower Merion Township Manager, for partnering on this event. And now let me introduce our speaker. Maureen Farrell is the Deputy Executive Director of GVF. Maureen has been with GVF for close to 13 years. Ernie and I both serve on the GVF Board of Directors and have known Maureen for over 10 years. As a TDM expert, Maureen manages contracts and projects regionally and nationally to enhance mobility. Maureen has been recognized nationally for her TDM expertise and leadership, with most recently receiving the region's first Excellence in Infrastructure Award from the Tri-County Area Chamber of Commerce. Maureen is also serving on the Association for Commuter Transportation's National Executive Committee in her role as Secretary for the board. Maureen, we're looking forward to your presentation, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Terry. Let me see here with share screen. Stacy, I should have that ability to share screen. Oh, here we go. Just put that in a PowerPoint view. Okay. Thank you so much, Terry and Ernie, for partnering on this event. Really, I'm going to get into a little more detail about our partners, but we would not be in the success that we've been having without the partnership and really serving on our board and continuing to support projects that we're working on and initiatives. Just want to thank you both very much for that. And so just wanted to really set the tone before going into detail about who GVF is and why we're here today to talk about how we can help. If we can imagine, whether you want to close your eyes or think of a time before the pandemic where you were sitting in traffic, a congestion that looks like this, it may be hard to believe pre-pandemic, but the frustration that maybe you felt sitting in traffic, late to an event. I know everyone, with these Zooms, it's very easy to pop on and pop off into the different ones that are being offered. This is 422 corridor, and I don't know those two individuals to the right, those cyclists. I wish I did because I use this photo often, but I know I could put money on it that these two individuals got to work quicker than these individuals in the cars. And so pre-pandemic, this was a daily commute. This was a daily life of many of us. And then the stay-at-home order was given in March, and our worlds were flipped upside down. Maybe it was loss of jobs, loss of loved ones, dramatic changes that have occurred. But what we also were looking at and seeing throughout the country is an improvement of air quality. So looking at the direct relationship of cars, pollution, and what that does to the environment. And so we started to see major improvements with the environment, major improvements with air quality, and also animals that were, returning to natural habitats. And although we may not want to see these type of animals roaming our streets of goats or deer, that was happening throughout the country. And you started to see birds, habitats really, come to life and seeing that because it wasn't congested with people or cars, these animals felt more comfortable. And air quality, we saw it was significant that in the first month that it dropped by 30% in the Philadelphia area and in other parts of the country. I'm sure many of you saw lots of pictures of LA and these heavily populated areas of what improvement to the air quality. I know many on the call are engineers or maybe familiar, but transportation has surpassed and is the leading cause of emissions in the region. And so again, looking at the first 3 months of this pandemic, air quality improved dramatically. And what we're seeing with COVID in areas of poor pollution, that it was harder for people to recover when they if they got COVID. Did something happen to my video, Stace? Sorry to interrupt. It just said a message popped up. The flow is okay? All right. Thank you.
You're okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. So with poor air quality, it's harder for people to recover if, God forbid, they get coronavirus. And so you're seeing a direct link to poor air quality, air pollution, to the higher risk of COVID deaths. And so, again, there's been dramatic changes with mobility. So many industries that said, we can't work from home, whether it be security, we can't trust our employees with productivity, some very valid reasons, but how quickly so many industries adapted and we're forced to work from home. So mobility has changed dramatically for communities and for businesses. And so as employers are either have reopened their doors or are reopening their doors as they plan for that, we're looking at this as a time to reset. We can't have everyone driving alone. We saw, if you can remember this picture, I do like to emphasize it because it paints such a picture of we can't have everyone driving alone. There is that direct link to poor air quality. So, everyone on the call and our partnerships with the township and with Special Services District, we're really challenging all of the partners to employers to really take time to educate your employees on the information that we're be presenting today, and to give people options and looking at it that we're here to help at the end of the day, trying to make a better place, community for people to live, work, and play. So now a little bit about GVF. Just wanted to paint that picture as we start to move into some of the highlights of the presentation. Last year, we celebrated our 30th anniversary. We're a nonprofit located in Philadelphia. I know some of our partners are on today. We're actually located in King of Prussia. And we were the first TMA established. I know every industry loves their acronyms, but a Transportation Management Association. And essentially there's several hundred of us throughout the country. Our goal is looking at how do we reduce congestion. And so one could say or argue that, well, hasn't that been solved because of the pandemic of everybody working from home? So like so many industries, we have had to evolve. We have had to reprioritize of how we're offering our programming and our priorities. And looking at that, we've put some emphasis in looking at, we have a 501c3 umbrella under our organization, GVF. And the goal of the Communities in Motion, it's looking at how do we educate the youth population, the next generation, on opportunities that you don't have to drive everywhere you go. And so we have a program in Tdm School District called My School in Motion with one of the middle schools. And we're working with their students, especially now as they're re-entering the school, able to be not doing virtual learning, some of them. And so this program was already underway, as so many of us had projects underway pre-pandemic, but it's looking at how can you gather walking pools? How can you gather bike pools so that maybe parents don't feel safe allowing their students to walk to school, but with a group of them. So we're focused on educating the teachers, the parents, because obviously these students can't make these decisions on their own. So it's a 3-tiered program. We're very excited about that, looking forward to bringing that into different school districts. And when I talk about evolving, GVF, we took time to look at, we have had 30 years of success, and where do we see the future and opportunities? And looking at our involvement at a national level, we also sit on a national board, as Terry mentioned. We're able to see successful programs going on throughout the country, and we really want to bring that to this region. So we formed a mobility think tank. It's called the 82 Alliance, and it's dedicated to reimagining how we move people throughout the cities, towns, because what we know is that we can't build our way out of this. So it's looking at behavioral change. How can we bring technology to this region is also something we really are advocating for. A partnership that we are involved in is with Transit Screen. They are out of DC, and they have technology that, working with employers, they can offer this as a HR, really it falls in line with their HR programming. So when employees are either being hired or they're making choices about where they want to work, they can see what type of transit options they have nearby. The worst thing for an employer to do is hire someone and then train them, and then the employee realizes their commute is just too painful, and then they leave. So it's really looking at retention and recruitment. We have a webinar coming up if you're interested. We've been doing we've had one so far for 82 Alliance. It's with national speakers. So we had one in December to the right, and then upcoming in February, it's focused on policy. And that right now we have our first speaker announced is the policy director for the League of American Bicyclists. So that's February 17th. And looking again, at our partnerships with GVF over the last 30 years, this is a glimpse. Really, I'd be here too long if I had to go through all of them. They're listed on our website. At the end of the day, transportation, how we get around affects everyone. We work with government, developers, large employers, colleges, universities. So this is just a glimpse. And again, thank you to Terry and Ernie for your support. And so you may have heard and seen on the screen earlier, but TDM, so again, another acronym for y'all, Transportation Demand Management. And so at the simplest form, TDM is looking at how do we manage the system? So that could be looking at trail connections, getting a program that emphasizes with carpooling. So how do you reduce congestion? And it's looking at anything from advocating for bike lanes, protected bike lanes. So anything that's going to help with improving air quality, the traffic flow. And so I mentioned our national involvement, and that is with the Association for Commuter Transportation, ACT. And we were, our executive director, he is the national public policy chair for ACT. And right now, well, I guess last year, and it will be reintroduced this year, but we're looking at, we've helped to develop TDM legislation. And the idea is that this would be in the federal code. So it would make it easier for these type of programs to be implemented, more funding to be available for marketing and outreach and education really on these type of programs that will ultimately help to enhance an HR, overall benefit package for an employee. And so when you think about TDM, and that could be, again, it's public transit, it's biking, it's essentially looking at how do you provide, it's providing equity, for your employees. So it's providing them with different options. And we can't assume that everyone can afford to have 2 cars for their home. So what can you do as an employer to make it easier for your employees to be better educated on what type of public transit is available to them? So it's different resources, perhaps on your intranet site. Is it having different webinars? How could we work with you more closely? And everyone, employers and employees, people are looking at this. It is a behavior change. And so how do they feel connected? So some of it's due to equity, but it also could be wellness, looking at it as a health and wellness benefit. You take, for example, looking at biking to work. This is a very fun event we do for Bike to Work Day. Unfortunately, obviously, we could not have that last year. Hopeful we can have something like this year in May. But again, everybody connects to maybe it's the environment, and it's looking at climate, of why you want to offer these type of TDM programs. So Forbes identified, and I mentioned that earlier, that transportation is the leading cause of emissions. And they recognize that TDM, these type of programs and offering, is a way that we can help to reduce that. And so this phrase, it's one that Dr. Seuss, but from the movie The Lorax, if anybody has kids, or if not kids and you still like the movie, that's okay. But the quote is, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." And I really think about this quote. We used this a few years ago. That's Stacy and I, way pre-pandemic. But that's what I believe what we do and what we want to challenge you all. We know that not everybody, in a few months are going to all jump on transit, all jump in a carpool. But if we can work together to see and have a few changes here and there as a group, as holistic, we need that type of leadership so that we can make a difference, because it will not get better if we do not work together. Because we don't want to be sitting in this, right? And so that leads me to talking a little bit about locally here, where many of you on the call I know are from. So looking at, communities that have invested in the infrastructure, have invested in making it easier for them to get around their community, whether it be for investing in trails, pedestrian safety. Those communities like Lower Merion Township, like City Avenue Special Services Districts, those are going to be the organizations, the communities that are going to recover quicker after this pandemic, because they've already been thinking about that as their future and caring about where and how their residents, how their employees are getting around. And so not probably news, obviously, Ernie has seen this slide before, but Lower Merion Township, it's a path most traveled through, and people coming into it. So this is a pre-pandemic number that I used in last year in a presentation to the Lower Merion Board's commissioners. But pre-pandemic, there was close to 40,000 people coming into the township to work. And then another 20 coming out. And then you could see there almost 3,000 that stayed in the township. So significant traffic that is moving around, coming into the township. This graph shows the lines, the purple and the green and the red. So that is transit, SEPTA transit areas. And so the idea that this community has tremendous accessibility to buses and has train stations, but there is still a challenge to get people, once they get off the train or get off the bus, there's a challenge to get to the workplace. So maybe people are hesitant to get on one of these alternatives. So again, through different type of research, that you can ride your bike on SEPTA, and therefore you can then bike that less than a mile to your workplace, perhaps. And so as we look at, again, it was pre-pandemic, the congestion, but we had been working with Lower Merion Township as they were doing their rezoning and looking at their commitment to creating a really walkable, a very walkable friendly community, and caring about how their employees got to work, how they moved around the township. We were in discussion, and it was adopted that we helped to develop a TDM policy. And so the TDM policy, these are not new to the country. There's other TDM policies that have been implemented throughout the country. And so through our research, we were able to help to cite examples of that and then draft the language. And then that was adopted in June. We were very excited about that. It's the first TDM policy for this region. And just wanted to really, hone in on Ernie McNeely, the township manager's quote, to really look at that it's traffic issues cannot and should not be addressed by just building more highways. And this TDM policy focuses our attention on more appropriate and environmentally sensitive approaches. And we know that funding is always going to be an issue. So we applaud Lower Merion Township's leadership in really looking at this from an environmental standpoint and a creative way to finding solutions. Lower Merion has also developed, I'm not going to go into the detail of every bullet of the policy. That's located on the website. Lower Merion has dedicated a page to TDM. So there's different metrics that the township is working on with employers. We have created a employer TDM handbook guide. So essentially it's looking at if you're an employer in the township, you can get this on the township's website, and it's a checklist to look at what are you already doing to actually help your employees get to work easier by offering, education on driving alone, whether it be public transit, maybe it's simple links on your website. So it's a checklist, inventory list of what you may be doing, and then you could see where the gaps are. And we're happy to help you with that to see how do you close those gaps. So we're continuing our partnership with the township on those efforts of implementation. And then just wanted to go into a little more detail. I know I've touched on a few modes of what is transportation demand management TDM, but looking at most of us, we didn't do a survey, but many of us working from home. So that was something that, obviously you don't need your car. So we were all exposed to that, and we're doing that in March. And some of these pictures may resonate pretty familiar with some of us. What we're doing right now, working from home, maybe some of us have found a more quieter space, but it really was crisis mode. It's find a corner of your room so that your kids can't find you, because so many children are still virtual. My children are in school, so I was able to have a little more once they went back. Everybody was, I know, stay at home for several months. And, you may have found your son or daughter standing on the back of your chair, or maybe they're trying to sabotage a conference call. So a lot of these are, I think, relatable to an extent. And what we're seeing is the research is that, there's this stress level that, I need to help my child or my dog, or, and now you have employees that are working extra hours or adjusting. And it's finding, how do we get back to that work-life balance? And, I know looking at with, I'm not going to touch on anything related to like the vaccine or anything, but perhaps it feels more hopeful as we enter a new year that we will start to see better change in the coming months is what I hope for. And I know we all do. And so what we're saying is with the work from home policy is to have that official policy. So you all had found ways to allow your employees to work from home. And so now if you're going to keep that, make sure you have an established work from home policy. We help to draft that for our partners. So again, if that's something of interest, we can assist with that easily. Other ways to, again, look at TDM strategies, ways to educate your employees on alternatives. Again, not driving alone. Carpooling is probably one that's pretty familiar with many. It's your own vehicle. You share the ride with a few employees. I understand that looking at the idea with being close to other people. And again, this might not be something right now that employees feel comfortable with. Van pooling is another option. Van pooling, we partner with Commute by Enterprise. So if you're familiar with rental cars, Enterprise owns their own vehicles. So employees don't have to worry about the wear and tear of their own vehicle. They don't have to worry about their insurance. So they get this vehicle, and you can see the bottom right, very comfortable luxury seats. They have Wi-Fi capability. This may be a little more comfortable for those that want a little more space. And again, looking at the idea that when people have to return to work, maybe they're working in the same department. There's going to be different protocols for every employer, what they need to do to feel safe. But I know that there's a lot of large campuses that there's going to be parking issues. So again, these type of methods are not for everybody, but again, we're just saying providing options and choices. You could provide upfront parking if they're doing these type of modes so they don't have to drive around. And then looking at public transit, I think we're all familiar with, but that last mile connection I had mentioned earlier in the presentation. And so that's looking at it that maybe once you get off the train, there's a barrier. Maybe there's not a sidewalk. There's not a safe way to get to your workplace. So there's an opportunity that perhaps companies, they can offer a shuttle, or those employees, they can have a van parked at the station. They get off the train and then they drive the van pool that I mentioned to their workplace. So again, there's different options. And what we have seen, in the research and articles that we, post on a website that I'll reference later in the presentation, there's little evidence that is linking getting back on transit to outbreaks. And so we can't have that Carmageddon of everybody returning to work and avoiding mass transit. And so on the township's website, on City Avenue Special Services District's website, there's a link of all the SEPTA buses. And so I'm not going to go into those in detail. There's also, you could plan your trip, but just wanted to really emphasize what a tremendous job that SEPTA is doing to, practice that social distancing, move better together is really what they're focused on. And to continue their sanitation, encouraging and mandating the masks. And if you don't have one, they're providing them. Their drivers have them. And so we've been continuing to promote that. And so, if your employers, if you're an employer and your employees, you think they would want to hear a little more information about, oh man, is it safe? We can do some one-off presentations with ensuring that your employees feel comfortable. You could follow them on social media as well, follow us so that you could see some of the real-time information that's going on that SEPTA is moving towards. And so another way is really looking at how do you enhance TDM and safety. Sometimes maybe that gets a little unnoticed, but is signage. If I get off a train or a bus, how do I know which direction to go? Now, if I'm working here regularly, okay, I've become and making myself educated, but aesthetics, I mean, the idea of feeling safe and trees and beautification and City Ave and the township, they've made investments to ensure this. Another is looking at technology. The bottom right is looking at, that's wayfinding. I had mentioned that earlier, transit screen. And so this is actually a screen that could go in your workplace. Picture it maybe in the lobby area. And you can also have it on an app that employee, before they leave for the day, they log onto the app and they can see the next time the closest bus leaves, what time the next train for SEPTA leaves. If there's a bike share nearby, they would be able to see how many bikes are available if they were an emergency and needed an Uber. So it's a one-stop shop of mobility options, is again, ways that you can help to enhance TDM at your workplace. And so looking at bike and ped infrastructure, I really love this photo on the left. The idea of really feeling safe when you bike. This is probably, pardon me, the protected bike lane. Perhaps obviously it doesn't need to be as wide, but those feeling, especially if you're new to biking, you're going to feel much safer with something being protected. The bottom right, pardon me, I probably haven't talked this much in a long time. The bottom right of looking at your bike lanes being colored, painted, the perception of a driver in a vehicle, they're going to see that bike lane more clearly when it's painted. Also looking as an employer, how can you provide a safe place for people that do bike a covered area for people to bring their bikes into the workplace. Lower Merion has done a tremendous job looking at infrastructure for biking, bike lanes, looking at bike racks. This is a SEPTA train station in the middle that has a bike rack. I know Chris Leswig is on the call from the township, who has led bike events and looking at with their safety, Lower Merion safe cycling. So it's looking at advocacy groups and again, creating a safe place for people to bike and walk. And we saw, and maybe many have seen over, different articles, but how quickly communities adapted in cities to temporarily close roadways. And you realize that, you're creating a better, safer place for people to move around. I live in Philadelphia. Martin Luther King Drive is still closed. And it's providing a really nice safe area for people to get out, bike. Lower Merion Township, you saw families getting out and biking more. I know I was with my kids. Also extensive back orders of bicyclists ordering bikes from bike shops. So we hope that these, I don't even want to call them trends, but we hope that these behavioral changes, that they stay and we can see, but we're not naive to think that there's still challenges out there. And so the idea that there's not bike lanes everywhere. So how can we continue again with that TDM policy to look at furthering these type of initiatives? And City Ave and the township, they do continue to invest in TDM. This is a picture of Presidential Boulevard that City Avenue provided this photo and a few others coming up. But it's all about really trying to create a safe place. So for pedestrians, this is a great crosswalk. It's clear for cars to slow down, the signage for employees, residents, getting across what are very busy streets in the City Avenue, Lower Merion area. City Avenue Special Services District is also working on, and they implement it with this project, slow down, have the cars slow down. So these are, you may have seen over by St. Joe's University, and I know Art's on the call today. Hi, Art. Another project that Terry and his organization have implemented. So this is actually a 5-second lead pedestrian. So that individual there on the right, so as a pedestrian is crossing into the intersection, and of course, Terry, you can chime in later on too if I misspoke, but they have about 5 seconds to get across, and that car, that's a red light, so they will not be making that right turn. So again, it's creating these, implementing these projects that are creating safe places for the residents and pedestrians and employees to move around. I really love this one that Terry was telling me about. This actually, it will speak to you. So we can't always put the negativity, if you will, on the cars, because sometimes they're not going slow, but I know I'm guilty of it, looking down on my cell phone. So this project is saying, I don't know the exact wording, but it's causing and drawing attention to, it's your turn. You need to cross the road. So I think this one is great. And again, the communities that are investing in these type of programs and projects, they're going to see a quicker recovery from this. So these are just a snapshot. Again, a lunch and learn on just these type of projects alone we could have as well. And so I just want to transition and really leave you with a few websites that, I think really would be of value to whether you see, you want to create a page on your intranet site, whether it be under HR or it's a transportation resources. I understand that TDM perhaps isn't a term that you're using in your employer site, but this, at the end of the day, how can people get to work? And so our wearetdm.com is a website. It serves, several different reasons. One is it's a one-stop shop of getting information on how do I bike? Can I register to be in a carpool? What are my public transit options? It's not just focused on Lower Merion Township. This is a broad-based. Also valuable with this website is we look at what are local, regional, and national programs that are related to TDM. When I think about and look at our national involvement and also looking at what's being done in Europe, we get these articles and then we post them to the website, we post them to our social media, and we talk about it if it's a good program and how can we bring it to this region. So that's one of our main goals of really looking at advocacy and looking at, with our taglines, innovation, how do we bring that to this region? So again, if you don't have an intranet site, or pardon me, if you don't have a page dedicated to transportation on your intranet site, this could be something we can easily help with, and you could start simple by doing that, or if you want emails sent out or helpful links in your website, we've done just about everything. So feel free to reach out. Also, you know, PennDOT has been able to do construction projects again for the last few months. So we manage 2 websites, particularly on the 422 corridor. It's 422improvements.com and 202.com. So anyone who's traveling from that area to the township, these are definitely websites you want to check out, and our social media. We post daily updates from PennDOT on the status of construction projects. It's also, you could sign up, and if you have an email, like if you have a question that gets sent directly to us, we respond timely to those. I mentioned on the City Av's website and the township's website, they do have links to trails. I believe I mentioned that, but the Circuit Trails is also a good website to find your best path. Another newer website, DVRPC developed the bike stress safe biking routes. And so that's the direct link. This website is great because if you don't have a trail in your backyard, I'm not going to have a show of hands, but I know I don't, but I'm not that far from a trail. So log on to this website, and then it'll start to push you and tell you, you know, safe roads that aren't as heavily trafficked. I think for new riders, this is a really great resource because it's going to show you those those safer routes before you get to your trail. And again, just wanted to promote the City Av's website. They have a transportation page. Getting here is easy. And then the Lower Merion Township's website dedicated to the TDM. And it also has that employer TDM Handbook guide that I mentioned earlier. And then just wanted to leave you with our final slide. If you're interested and would like more information on GVF, if you don't already, get our weekly emails. We send those out every Monday. You can sign up at info@gvftma.com. We're on not every platform, but we're on a decent amount, so feel free to follow us. And those are several other websites. So I know it was a lot of information. I know it's also people's lunch hour, but I hope that it was enough to whet the appetite, and happy to have any questions that are rolling in and see what we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. So we did have a couple of questions, but I'm going to start with one related to the TDM policy with Lower Merion Township. So what can we expect to see as the next steps with implementing the TDM policy? What's to come? And Ernie, if you feel like jumping in on that also, I'll spotlight you too.
Sure, Stacy. So Lower Merion's been thinking about TDM for a long time, and doing things like improving access to our train stations, Kinwood Heritage Trail, and so Lower Merion's been invested in this for a long time, but we adopted in 2020 the TDM policy that GVF helped us to craft. Right now it is policy. So when Chris Leswing in our building and planning department is looking at new developments, they're sort of judging those developments and along the lines of the TDM policy and looking at the types of things that we can ask the developers to think about with respect to TDM. Down the road, it is our intention, and I would expect our Board of Commissioners, because of the support they had for the TDM policy, that down the road we'll be implementing the TDM requirements in our land development and subdivision ordinance. These will be requirements that a new developer coming in will have to address some of these TDM strategies. They'll have to submit a TDM plan to the township, and we will measure it going forward. We're not going to do that without saying thank you and giving you something as a developer. So in all likelihood, you'll get something for submission of a TDM plan, like a reduction in a parking requirement. So it's not going to be all one-sided, and they will not be requirements that are too hard and difficult to meet, but they will take us down the road of TDM, because the one thing we don't want in Lower Merion is we all want to go back to normal, but we don't want to go back to normal traffic jams, and we don't want our main highways through Lower Merion to become parking lots. So we want normal, but we don't want normal traffic jams coming back. And that's why hopefully Maureen did a wonderful job today presenting this, and hopefully it's got everyone thinking about what you can do as employers to advocate for TDM.
Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you, Ernie. And yeah, I would just say that's exactly, just to echo that, is, you know, Lower Merion, they can only control, I think, well, Chris says it better. They can only control what they know. And so, you know, looking at what traffic comes in and looking at the employers and the developers that are working in the township, that's the idea of implementation there. And again, yeah, we're happy. The idea of this lunch and learn, and it's being recorded and hopefully will then be shared on all the platforms of our partners today, is to start working more closely with the employers. It's educating. It's those resources that are up on the township's website on the TDM policy, that we're here to answer questions and how can we help with implementation. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we had 3 more questions in the chat. We'll see how we do with time. But sticking with the TDM policy, we just got a question from Dave Schwartz. How will the results of Lower Merion's TDM policy and implementation steps be measured?
Sure, Stacy. That will be a task that our building and planning department will take on. They'll be working with GBF down the road, and GBF will help us. But as we begin to implement some more of these TDM strategies, we will want to keep a record and keep track. And of course, once it becomes part of land development subdivision ordinance requirements, then of course, some of the requirement for tracking what's going on will also be conveyed over to the particular developer of a site. But we do want to track it. We do want to try and measure the accomplishments our TDM policy creates.
Okay, great. Another question we got from Chris Leswing is a bit broader. Do you see funding opportunities resulting from the new administration's anticipated emphasis on complete streets?
Chris, you had to ask that one over a Zoom. So we're very hopeful with the new administration. Your specific question for complete streets, I guess I'll just back up to say, sticking with that tone of messaging, and it is, we're very hopeful with the new administration. I mentioned earlier in the presentation, our executive director is the National Public Policy Chair, and he's already met with Biden's transition team, the transportation folks that are going to be serving. Well, not with this new secretary yet. He didn't meet with him, but it's looking at with that TDM legislation. We do feel very hopeful. We already have a sponsor for that will be reintroduced this year, hopefully early, and see movement on that. And then the goal of looking at absolutely looking at with complete streets. It will be our goal. We're not forcing any specific mode, and that's similar with the TDM policy. It has to be looking at from all multimodals, complete streets, and connectivity. I don't know if I really answered your direct question, Chris, but we can talk a little bit more offline on that one for sure.
Thank you. Then we had a question from Pete Simone. With the levels of public transit ridership being at a significant low, and essentially only essential workers are able to ride at this time, and the majority of others are working from home, has anyone heard of any agency that is looking at this trend and possible solutions for funding for transit, as we're probably not going to see ridership increase anytime soon?
Right now, I think transit it's a choice because they have to get to work. I would probably agree with that those that are getting on transit, but I don't know if looking at, that it's only essential workers. I think as we see over in the business park here in King of Prussia, some ridership coming back on some of the shuttles that we manage, it's going to be slow. I know SEPTA, we're all concerned looking at with public transit funding for the future. And that's, I know, an area that SEPTA is advocating for. It's something that absolutely we're advocating for. As far as another organization, I'm not sure specifically what that's regarding, what that is meant for. I mean, I know with the national board we sit on, with APTA, they're advocating for additional transportation funding. So I know that there's organizations like ours at the national level as well that are advocating for more funding. And that is part of our messaging when we talk to legislators, but as far as, if you will, I don't want to say grassroots, but when we're talking to employers, that's where we're trying to break down the barriers that it's dangerous to get on SEPTA. It's dangerous to get on public transit because it's not, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time. I know SEPTA was on a webinar that we partnered on the end of last year. And it's going to take a lot of time for ridership if it will ever see those type of numbers. I know that's concerned for sure, but I know what our number one priority as we're continuing with our messaging is that they're sanitizing, that it's clean, it's safe. And that's why I think when you start to see those pictures following on social media, seeing the story of public transit, what SEPTA is doing, that's where we hope that employees will start to see that, okay, I mean, I know I've ridden SEPTA. I know that my nanny, when she's had to come work and help if I wasn't able to be home, stay at home, work from home. So I think people, but it's going to take some time, but we hope that our role can help with that and educate employees on that it is safe. That was a little long-winded, but we could talk as well, Pete, offline as well.
Okay, thank you. And then we just had one more question to do with the TDM policy from William D. Guffroy. With the TDM policy in Lower Merion, are TDM measures integrated with PennDOT requirements for new land development or redevelopment?
I would say that the TDM requirements are really sort of different from that which PennDOT might impose. I mean, the PennDOT's more concerned about engineering and that type of thing. Our TDM policy really doesn't look at a whole lot of that. So I think they really are separate and distinct.
Okay, thank you. And we did just get one more question. Does Lower Merion communicate with the City of Philadelphia's Vision Zero initiative and local street safety advocates? As a reverse commuter from West Philly to City Ave, I think there should be a bridge here.
I can answer that. The district participates with the city on the various committees that they've established. And part of our job is really communicating what the Montgomery County side's thinking about. Chris does get involved as well, but we try to keep that dialogue going as the bridge between the city and the county and the township. And while I'm speaking, I just want to give a shout out to Adrienne Ice, who's on the call. She was the primary author of the City Avenue Connectivity Study that was done in 2014 on behalf of the township and the district. And you pictured one of the major recommendations, which was the crosswalk at Presidential Boulevard. So it's nice to see something done that you recommended. I'm sure Adrian's happy about that.
That's my back route coming off 76 from the city. If it's too much, well, pre-pandemic, this was all if it's too much traffic, I cut through and then I make the right there at Presidential. And I was loving the transformation of seeing that. And now to see it implemented, it's really nice.
Okay, I think with
Right,
that,
well, that looks like we, and again, my email's on the website, our contact information. Want to thank Terry and Ernie again for the longstanding partnership and support on this event, and in the future any others. Again, if your employer would like some type of webinar like this that could be more focused on a specific area, feel free to reach out. We're here to help and would love that opportunity. So thank you all today for joining, and we will see and talk to everybody soon. Thank you.